Welcome to Whispers of the Heart, where romance, passion, and unexpected second chances come to life. Thank you for joining us for today's story, The Contractor's Claim, from the Sanctuary Falls series. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who enjoys emotional, interracial romance. Your support helps more readers and listeners discover Whispers of the Heart. Now, settle in and enjoy The Contractor's Claim. The smell of old paper and vanilla usually comforted Zoe Williams. That evening, however, it smelled like impending disaster. Rain tapped steadily against the front windows of Paperback Sanctuary, while Zoe stood near the top of a rolling ladder in the bookstore's back corner. She held a first edition of Jane Eyre against her chest as though it were a priceless treasure. In her opinion, it was. She loved everything about the old building. She loved its creaking floorboards, high tin ceiling, and tall windows that filled the store with afternoon sunlight. She even loved the dust that gathered in the highest corners, although she would never admit that to a customer. Paperback Sanctuary had been her dream for years. Unfortunately, her dream was beginning to lean. The enormous oak bookcase beside her tilted forward by a fraction of an inch. Zoe had named it the Beast shortly after opening the store. It was beautiful, stubborn, and far heavier than anything containing novels had a right to be. "Just one more row," she murmured. She stretched toward the top shelf and slid the book into place. Wood groaned beneath her. Zoe stopped moving. The sound had not come from the bookcase. It had come from the floor. She glanced down. The wide pine board supporting one side of the ladder was bending beneath her weight. Her stomach tightened. "All right," she whispered. We read these in Ebres. Are going to climb down very carefully. But she shifted one foot toward the next rung. Raising the floorboard snapped. The sharp crack echoed through the empty store. Then the ladder lurched sideways. Zoe cried out and reached for the bookcase. Her fingers caught the edge of a shelf, but the beast was already off balance. The ladder fell. Zoe landed hard on her side, tangled in her skirt and cardigan. A second later, the oak bookcase came crashing after her. Books rained across the floor. Hardcovers struck the checkout counter and scattered in every direction. The counter stopped the bookcase from landing directly on Zoe, but the heavy frame trapped her in a narrow pocket between the counter and the wall. Then everything went still. Dust drifted through the air. Zoe coughed and stared at the water-stained ceiling above her. Her ankle throbbed. Her shoulder hurt. Several encyclopedias blocked the only open space through which she might have crawled. She tested the bookcase with both hands. It did not move. "Not dead," she muttered. "That is something." She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out her phone. 12% battery. The closed sign hung in the front window. No customers were coming. Her part-time employee would not arrive until the following morning. Zoe considered calling emergency services, but humiliation stopped her. She was frightened and trapped, yet she did not believe she was seriously injured. She imagined flashing lights filling Main Street and half of Sanctuary Falls, gathering outside to watch firefighters rescue the woman who had been defeated by her own bookcase. She needed someone strong, someone with tools. 3 weeks earlier, after noticing the dip in the floor, she had saved the number for Ironwood Construction. She had intended to call for an estimate. Then she had remembered the condition of her bank account. Zoe found the number and pressed it. A man answered after the fourth ring. "Ironwood Construction, Carter speaking." His voice was deep and rough. Machinery rumbled somewhere behind him. "Hello, Mr. Carter?" "Yes. This is Zoe Williams. I own Paperback Sanctuary." There was a pause. "I know the place." Relief moved through her. At least she would not have to explain where she was. "I realize your office is closed, but I have a small emergency." "What kind of emergency?" Zoe looked at the massive shelf hovering above her. "The floor broke. A bookcase fell. And I appear to be stuck beneath part of my inventory." The machinery on his end went quiet. "Are you hurt?" The irritation had vanished from his voice. In its place was something sharp and commanding. "My ankle hurts, but I don't think anything is broken. Are you bleeding?" "No." "Can you move your fingers and toes?" Zoe obeyed before realizing he could not see her. "Yes." "Do not try to lift anything. If the floor is compromised, moving that shelf could bring down more of it." "I wasn't planning on rearranging the furniture." "I'm coming." "You don't have to." "I'm 5 minutes away. Keep your phone beside you." The call ended. 4 minutes later, the front door flew open. The bell struck the glass so hard, Zoe thought it might break. "Zoe?" The man's voice filled the bookstore. "Back here!" Heavy boots crossed the old floor. A tall shadow fell over her. Zoe looked up and kept looking. Mason Carter was enormous. He had to be at least 6 feet 4 inches tall. His gray t-shirt stretched across broad shoulders and a powerful chest. Drywall dust covered his jeans and work boots. His dark hair looked as though he had pushed his fingers through it too many times. And his closely trimmed beard gave him a rugged appearance that suited his profession. His gray eyes found hers. For 1 second, his face went completely still. Then his attention moved over the collapsed shelf, broken floorboards, scattered books, and Zoe wedged beneath them. "That's worse than a small emergency." I didn't want to sound dramatic. "Next time, be dramatic." He stepped around the counter, tested the floor with his boot, and found a stable position. "Cover your head." Zoe folded her arms over her face. Mason gripped the oak frame. His muscles tightened as he lifted the bookcase far enough to create an opening. He extended one hand toward her. "Take my hand." Zoe reached for him. His palm was warm, broad, and roughened by years of physical work. His fingers closed around hers, and he pulled her free as though she weighed nothing. Once she was clear, he lowered the bookcase carefully instead of allowing it to crash. Then he turned to her. His size should have made him intimidating. Instead, his concern made her feel safer than she had since the floor gave way. He crouched in front of her. "Where does it hurt?" "My ankle. And maybe my pride." "I can't do much for the pride." "That's unfortunate. But I can check the ankle." His hand closed carefully around her boot. He examined the joint without removing it, watching her face as he moved her foot slightly. Zoe winced. "Probably a sprain," he said. "You should still have it checked if the swelling gets worse." "I will." Mason stood and looked around the bookstore. His expression darkened. "We need to talk about this building." Zoe followed his gaze toward the broken floor. "It has character. It has structural failure." "That sounds less charming." "It isn't supposed to sound charming." He nudged a rotten piece of wood with his boot. "This place is dangerous." Mason retrieved a flashlight from his truck and examined the crawl space beneath the broken floor. Zoe leaned against the checkout counter, keeping her weight off her ankle. She watched the muscles across his back move beneath his shirt as he lowered himself near the opening. He smelled like rain, sawdust, and clean male skin. The combination was distracting. Zoe told herself she was reacting to the shock of nearly being crushed by classic literature. Mason remained silent for too long. When he finally stood, dust covered his knees and his mouth had settled into a grim line. "The joists are soft," he said, "and yeah, you have termites in the subfloor and the main support beam beneath this section is cracked." Zoe's stomach dropped. "Cracked as in repairable?" "Everything is repairable." The answer should have comforted her. It did not. Mason continued. "But this isn't a patch job. The damaged beam has to be replaced. You need new joists, a new subfloor in this section, and reinforcement beneath the heavier shelves. I also want to inspect the roof supports." Zoe stared at the books scattered across the floor. "How much?" Mason hesitated. She looked at him. "Please don't protect me from the number." "Materials and labor could reach $15,000. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "I don't have $15,000. "I figured." "I don't have $1,500. I used what I had to order inventory for the holiday season. Her eyes moved around the bookstore. This was not simply a business. It was every late shift she had worked, every vacation she had skipped, and every doubtful voice she had ignored. Now one broken beam threatened all of it. "I'll have to close," she said. "I can't let customers walk across a dangerous floor." Mason studied her. He hated the defeat in her voice. Fixing damaged things was what he did. Buildings made sense to him. A cracked beam needed support. Rotten wood needed replacement. Problems had measurements, plans, and solutions. But the sadness on Zoe's face stirred something far less manageable. He looked around Paperback Sanctuary. Even after the collapse, the shop felt carefully arranged. Books were organized by category and author. Orders were stacked neatly behind the counter. A handwritten calendar displayed upcoming events and delivery dates. Nothing in Zoe's world appeared to be misplaced. His own office was the opposite. Invoices covered his desk. Receipts filled 2 coffee cans. An unopened letter from the tax office had disappeared beneath a set of blueprints, and Mason was fairly certain one of his largest clients still owed him money. An idea came to him today. Contractor close permanently, he said. Zoe looked at him. I don't have another option. You might. He folded his arms across his chest. My construction office is a disaster. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm serious. I can build a house from the foundation up, but I can't find an invoice when I need it. I'm losing time and probably money because I'm disorganized. Zoe's brows drew together. What does your office have to do with my floor? I need someone to organize my files, digitize receipts, create a proper billing system, and prepare everything for tax season. She waited. Mason gestured toward the undamaged shelves. You clearly know how to create order. You want to hire me? I want to trade. Her expression changed. You organize my office and straighten out my business records. In exchange, I repair the bookstore. I cover the materials and labor. Zoe stared at him. You're offering me a $15,000 renovation in exchange for administrative work? Good administrative work could save me more than that. It was not entirely an exaggeration. Mason had received 3 late payment notices that month because invoices had never been sent. Still, money was not the only reason the arrangement appealed to him. The thought of seeing Zoe every day had entered his mind and made itself comfortable. She looked down at her hands. When would I work for you? The bookstore has to remain closed during the major repairs. You can work from my office during the day while my crew works here. In the evening, you can inspect what we've done and make sure I haven't installed anything offensive. I don't know enough about construction to find it offensive. You own 4 different editions of Jane Eyre. I have a feeling you can form opinions. Despite herself, Zoe smiled. Mason extended his hand. Do we have a deal? She looked at his scarred, dusty fingers, then placed her hand in his. Deal. His hand closed around hers. The contact lasted longer than a business handshake required. His thumb moved once across her knuckles. Heat traveled up Zoe's arm. Mason felt it too. He saw the slight widening of her eyes and the way her lips parted. He released her before he forgot they were standing beside a collapsed bookcase. Come to my office tomorrow at 8, he said. Wear something comfortable. It gets dusty. I thought I was organizing paperwork. In my office, paperwork is a contact sport. He boarded the damaged section of the floor, secured the bookstore, and carried Zoe's boxes of valuable books into the back room. When he finally left, Zoe stood behind the counter with an ice pack against her ankle and the memory of his hand around hers. She wondered how a conversation about termite damage had managed to feel like the beginning of something dangerous. 2 weeks later, Zoe had reached 2 conclusions. Mason Carter was a brilliant contractor, and he was the most disorganized man in Sanctuary Falls. Rain pounded against the metal roof of the ironwood construction office while Zoe knelt in front of a filing cabinet. It was after 9 in the evening, and she had spent nearly an hour searching for one missing invoice. "How do you lose paperwork for $40,000 worth of lumber?" she asked. Mason sat behind his desk, leaning back in a worn leather chair. "I didn't lose it." "Then where is it?" "In the to-do pile." Zoe slowly looked around the room. Every visible surface held a stack of papers. "Your entire office is a to-do pile. I know where most things are. You thought last month's payroll report was in the microwave." "I wasn't using the microwave. That does not improve the situation." Mason rubbed a hand over his beard and tried not to smile. Zoe was beautiful when she was annoyed. She wore a fitted burgundy sweater and a dark skirt that hugged her curves. Her braids were gathered into a loose knot, although several had escaped and framed her face. For 2 weeks, she had walked into his office every morning smelling faintly of vanilla. She had created spreadsheets, labeled files, called overdue clients, and reorganized his schedule. His business had never operated more smoothly. His concentration had never been worse. Zoe leaned farther into the filing cabinet. Mason's attention moved to the curve of her hips. He looked away. Then he looked back. "There you are," Zoe said. She pulled a crumpled invoice from the back of the drawer and rose to her feet. Mason straightened, hoping she had not caught him staring. She waved the paper. "You filed a lumber invoice under the letter R. Roofing materials. The supplier's name begins with S. I was close. You were nowhere near close." She crossed the office and placed the invoice on his desk. "You cannot keep changing the system after I organize it. I'm trying to keep your company functioning, and you're sabotaging me." "I'm not sabotaging you. You're stubborn, messy, and impossible to work with." Mason's gaze lifted to hers. "Impossible?" Zoe heard the change in his voice. It was quieter now. Rougher. He rose from his chair and walked around the desk. The office suddenly felt much smaller. "I meant professionally," she said. You fold it back. "Maybe I like watching you put things in order." "Ah, that sounds like an excuse." "Maybe." He moved closer. Yeah, Zoe stepped back until her hips touched the filing cabinet. Mason stopped in front of her. He placed one hand on the cabinet beside her, leaving enough room for her to move away if she chose. She did not move. His eyes searched hers. "You've been driving me crazy since the night you called me from beneath that bookcase." Zoe's breath caught. "You barely knew me." "I knew enough." "What did you know?" "That you were frightened, but still making jokes. That you cared more about those books than your ankle. And that I wanted to make sure nothing in that building ever hurt you again." His gaze dropped to her mouth. Zoe's pulse quickened. "Mason, tell me to step back." She looked at the man in front of her. His strength was obvious, but so was the restraint holding him still. She shook her head. Mason lowered his mouth to hers. The first kiss was firm but cautious, giving her time to pull away. Instead, Zoe gripped his shirt and kissed him back. Mason's control broke. He wrapped an arm around her waist and drew her against him. His mouth moved over hers with weeks of suppressed hunger. Zoe felt surrounded by him, his warmth, his scent, the roughness of his beard against her skin. He lifted her onto the edge of the desk, sweeping a roll of blueprints aside. She laughed against his mouth. "You're ruining my filing system." "I'll pay the penalty." "You can't afford my rates. I'm beginning to understand that." He kissed her again. His hands remained at her waist until she pulled him closer. Then one moved slowly along her thigh, stopping when her body tensed. Mason lifted his head. "Too fast?" Zoe searched his face. "No, just unexpected. I've thought about this every day." "Every day?" "Sometimes twice." She smiled, and he kissed the smile from her lips. You made that trade because you needed help with your office? She asked. I did need help. But, Mason exhaled, but I also wanted an excuse to keep seeing you. That sounds suspiciously dishonest. I never lied about the condition of your building. The repair really is worth that much. And my office really was one late invoice away from becoming a crime scene. Zoe narrowed her eyes. Mason continued before she could object. I could have hired someone else to organize this place. I didn't want someone else. Her expression softened. You wanted me? From the moment you looked up at me from beneath that shelf. That was not my best look. It worked for me. Zoe touched his beard. And what happens when the bookstore is finished? Mason's eyes darkened. Then I find another reason to keep you. Before Zoe could answer, he kissed her again. The storm continued around them, but neither noticed. Thank you for spending time with Zoe and Mason in Sanctuary Falls. If you're enjoying the Contractor's Claim, please like this video, subscribe to Whispers of the Heart, and share the story with another romance lover. Now let's return to Zoe and Mason. The next morning, the air between them had changed. They did not discuss what had happened in Mason's office. They did not need to. Every glance carried the memory of his hands at her waist and her fingers in his hair. Mason's crew worked throughout the bookstore, replacing damaged joists and reinforcing the floor. Zoe had arrived with iced coffee and a list of questions about the new reading area. She found Mason standing on a section of scaffolding near the ceiling. He had removed his shirt in the heat. Sweat gleamed across his shoulders and back while he positioned a heavy support beam. Zoe stopped walking. She understood that staring was impolite. She stared anyway. Mason glanced down and caught her. A grin spread across his face. See something you like? I'm evaluating the workmanship. From that angle? The angle is excellent. He laughed. Zoe lifted the drink carrier. Coffee? For you, I'll come down. Mason turned to secure the nail gun to his belt. His glove slipped against the metal hook. The tool shifted. He reached for it, and his boot slid across loose sawdust. The scaffolding rocked. Mason! He caught the crossbar before falling, but his forearm struck a jagged edge of exposed metal. He swore. Blood appeared immediately, running down his arm and dripping to the floor. Zoe dropped the coffees. The cups burst open near her feet. Mason climbed down, gripping his forearm. I'm fine. You are bleeding everywhere. It looks worse than it is. It looks like your arm is trying to leave your body. He reached for a cloth, but Zoe grabbed it first and pressed it against the wound. Blood soaked through almost immediately. Her stomach turned. We're going to the hospital. Zoe, do not argue with me. I can wrap it. You can get in the truck. Several members of his crew turned toward them. One man wisely began gathering Mason's tools without being asked. 20 minutes later, Zoe paced an examination room at Sanctuary General Hospital. Mason sat on the edge of the bed with his injured arm resting across his lap. Zoe's cardigan was stained with his blood. The door opened. A tall doctor entered wearing charcoal scrubs beneath a white coat. His dark hair was silvering at the temples, and his composed expression suggested very little surprised him. He glanced at Mason's arm. I heard you had an argument with some metal flashing. The flashing cheated, Mason said. The doctor looked at Zoe. His eyes took in her pale face and blood-stained clothing. I'm Dr. Marcus Sterling. Is he going to be all right? Dr. Sterling removed the cloth and examined the wound. You missed the artery by a very small margin, he told Mason, which means you are either lucky or too stubborn to bleed properly. Can you stitch it? Yes. Then you will rest. I have a project to finish. You had a project to finish. Now you have stitches to protect. Mason frowned. Dr. Sterling remained unmoved. You will not climb, lift, or operate power tools for at least 10 days. 10? Would you prefer 14? Mason wisely stopped talking. A nurse brought supplies while Dr. Sterling cleaned and closed the wound. Zoe remained in the chair beside the bed, watching every movement. Mason noticed the guilt settling over her face. On the drive to his house, she barely spoke. He waited until they entered his living room. "Say it." Zoe wrapped her arms around herself. "You got hurt because you were looking at me. I got hurt because I didn't secure my tool. You were distracted. I've worked construction for years. Distractions happen. I'm responsible for keeping my footing. This is what I was afraid of." "What?" "That this would become too much, that being together would interfere with the work." Mason's expression hardened. "Being together?" She gestured between them. "This. Whatever this is." He walked toward her. "You think I'm going to regret kissing you because I needed stitches? I think I may be making your life more complicated. My life was complicated before you arrived. I just couldn't find the paperwork proving it." She did not smile. Mason stopped directly in front of her. "You don't get to blame yourself for my mistake. I should have waited until you came down. And I should have secured the nail gun before I looked at you. That part is on me." Her eyes filled. "I saw all that blood." Mason's voice softened. "I know. I thought—" She could not finish. He placed his uninjured hand against her cheek. "I'm here." Zoe turned her face into his palm. "I don't want to be the reason you get hurt." "You aren't." He leaned closer. "You are the reason I want to finish the bookstore properly. You are the reason my business is finally making sense. And you are the reason I wake up wanting to get to work before sunrise." "That might be the pain medication talking." "It isn't that strong." A tear slipped down her cheek. Mason wiped it away with his thumb. "You are not a problem I need to solve, Zoe. You are the woman I want in my life." Her heart tightened. "You barely know me?" "I know you alphabetize your spices. You looked inside my kitchen cabinets? You sent me to find cinnamon. That was private. I know you pretend not to like sweet coffee, but you add vanilla syrup when no one is watching. I know you reread Jane Eyre every winter. I know you talk to the books when you think the shop is empty." Zoe stared at him. "You heard that?" "Every word." "That is humiliating." "I liked it." He rested his forehead against hers. "I also know you're afraid to depend on anyone because the bookstore has always been yours to carry. But wanting me doesn't make you weak. And caring about you doesn't make me careless." Zoe closed her eyes. "Dr. Sterling said you have to rest." "I heard him. You're hiring a subcontractor." "Yes, ma'am." "You will stay off ladders." "Yes, ma'am. And I'm checking your pain medicine schedule." Mason smiled. "Anything else?" She placed a hand against his chest. "Yes." "What?" "Kiss me." He obeyed. The kiss was slow and tender, nothing like the hungry kiss they had shared in his office. It felt more dangerous because it carried something deeper than attraction. 6 weeks later, Paperback Sanctuary reopened. The broken floor had been replaced with polished hardwood. Rough timber beams crossed the ceiling, giving the bookstore warmth without hiding the strength beneath them. In the corner where the beast had fallen, Mason had built a reading area with velvet chairs, low tables, and custom shelves. The entire town seemed to attend the opening. Zoe stood behind the counter in an emerald green dress, looking at the crowd with shining eyes. The bookstore was no longer simply repaired. It had been transformed. Mason came up behind her and wrapped both arms around her waist. The long cut on his forearm had healed into a pink scar. "Stop trembling," he murmured. "I'm not trembling. You are. What if no one buys anything? I'll buy everything. You don't read. I'll learn." She leaned back against him. "You would have to reorganize the construction office into a library." "I know someone who's good at organizing." The front bell rang. Jasmine entered wearing a yellow dress, her hand linked with Wyatt's. The rancher removed his black hat as they crossed the shop. Jasmine embraced Zoe. "This place is beautiful. Thank you." Wyatt shook Mason's hand. "I heard Ironwood Construction filed its taxes early. Rumors travel fast. Folks are calling it a miracle." Mason looked at Zoe. "I hired the right woman." "The right boss," Zoe corrected. Mason's mouth curved. "Yes, ma'am." The door opened again. Sheriff Caleb Stone entered in uniform, his badge catching the warm overhead light. He surveyed the room automatically, noting every entrance before approaching the group. "Carter," he said. "Sheriff?" Caleb looked around the shop. "Building looks solid. I'll take that as a compliment." "You should." Wyatt motioned toward the refreshment table. "Get something to eat, Caleb. You look like you've been arresting people since breakfast." Caleb crossed the room. At that moment, Layla stepped away from the refreshment table carrying a tray of red velvet cupcakes. She walked directly into the sheriff's chest. The tray tilted. Caleb caught it with one hand and steadied Layla with the other. Her braids bounced around her shoulders. "Oh, goodness, I'm sorry." Caleb looked down at her. A streak of icing marked her cheek. For a moment, the stern sheriff said nothing. Layla gave him a nervous smile. "Would you like a cupcake?" His hand remained around her elbow. "No." Her smile faded slightly. Caleb cleared his throat. "I mean, yes, I'll take one." Layla's smile returned. "Red velvet? That's fine." "It's more than fine. It's my grandmother's recipe." Caleb accepted the cupcake, although his attention remained fixed on Layla. Across the room, Zoe nudged Mason. "Did you see that?" "See what?" "Never mind." She turned in his arms. Mason looked down at her. The noise of the grand opening faded around them. "You happy?" he asked. Zoe looked at the rebuilt shelves, the reading nook, and the customers carrying books toward the register. Then she looked at the man who had restored far more than her floor. "I am." "Good!" "I still have one concern." Mason's eyebrows lifted. "What concern?" "The lock on the back office door may not be working properly." "I installed that lock myself." "Then perhaps you should inspect it." Understanding darkened his eyes. "During your grand opening, contractors should stand behind their work." Mason took her hand. "I take my guarantees seriously." He led her toward the back room. Zoe laughed as he opened the door and followed her inside. For years, she had believed Paperback Sanctuary was her greatest love. Then Mason Carter walked through the door and showed her that some dreams were meant to be built by two people. Thank you for listening to the Contractor's Claim, part of the Sanctuary Falls series. Zoe and Mason discovered that love can find its way into the messiest places, rebuild what has been damaged, and create something stronger than either person could have built alone. Please like this video, subscribe to Whispers of the Heart, and share this story with another romance lover. Join us again next week for another emotional love story from Whispers of the Heart. Until then, keep believing that love can appear when you least expect it.